Mrs. Crutch.
The Lilac Festival was awesome. There were thousands and thousands of people. It was wonderful. It was perfect weather. I even got out without spending a lot of money, which was good. But it was a great day. Kirsty Mack and her crew. And the next morning, Sunday morning, driving down through town, it is immaculately clean. It was wonderful. Great job.
Thank
That's all I
you.
have.
You were right. But thank you. Mayor McKeon.
That was such a short amount of input. I too had the Lilac Festival, Mrs. Crutch, on my list, and you're absolutely correct. It was interesting when I went to Bud's Saturday morning for breakfast at 6 o'clock. It's pouring down rain, and I'm looking, watching that radar, thinking, well, we got a chance here, and walked out of Bud's at 6:45. It's barely raining, and by 7:30 it was cleared off. So, Mr. Sobiak, if you had any input there, I appreciate it. Beyond that, Friday night we had the induction of Terry Ryan into our Hall of Fame. That was a very nice event, very well attended. I just want to thank the community for the turnout. Large contingent of the Ryan family there, but many members of our community, and I think it was a good time. Terry's brother, Bub, gave quite a presentation, and how thrilled he was to be back in Defiance and walking around, and just a nice event. And beyond that, I emailed council on Sunday, I believe, to let them know we have an opening on our Tuttle Board Museum, and we had a good list of candidates. I've selected Janice Richardson, who lives on Stonemore Drive, and Janice has enthusiastically accepted my desire to appoint her, so that is my request, is that we get the consent of council to do that, Mr. President.
So council, in regards to the appointment of Janice Richardson to the Tuttle Board, shall the consent of council be given to this appointment? All in favor of this appointment, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Welcome aboard, Janice, and thank you for serving, and that's all I have, sir.
All right. Well, thank you. Mr. Mack.
Yes, thanks, Mr. President. Last week I had updated council on mosquito spraying. We've continued to receive some complaints about it. I wanted to let you know. We sent it out for calibration. One of the parts wasn't working correctly. So it's on order. We hope to get it as soon as possible so mosquito spraying can start next week. That's why we sent it up for calibration. It's important to be sending the right amount of spray out in the right area, and so we want to make sure we're doing it correctly. So it will be yet another week while we're waiting for this part to get in. The other thing I had was a request for executive session 121.22G1 for the hiring and compensation of a public employee.
Mr. Mack has requested an executive session this evening. Do we have such a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Second?
Second.
Mr. Engel?
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
And Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Great. Before we adjourn for this evening, we'll have an executive session.
And then the last thing I had, if Councilwoman Crutch doesn't feel like she spent enough money at the Lilac Festival, I would be willing to offer one of the children that I had to shepherd around that day. You're more than welcome to take 1, 2, 3, whatever you feel comfortable with.
I was lucky grandkids weren't with me.
I took care of the tab for 3 of them in cabin fever.
They're hopeless mooches.
They didn't mooch me at the ball game, so that was pretty good.
That's all, Mr. President.
Mr. O'Donnell?
I have nothing at this time, Mr. President.
And Ms. Sprague?
I too enjoyed the Lilac Fest. I have a child to offer up as well that likes ponies and carnival games, but the ponies were free, so that was nice. But no, it was really nice. Windy, but it was a lot of fun. I just have one purchase order, building inspection 2024-01014, Defiance County Residential Housing. It's a release of escrow funds, $26,000 even. And that's just an in and out transfer of funds. That's all I have.
Thank you. We do have 2 items of legislation up for the discussion this evening. Would you read the caption for the first?
Third reading by caption only, an ordinance authorizing a scope and services contract for the first 2 phases of the Parks and Riverfront Master Plan and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Before we get underway on this item. I have 3 emails that were sent to me that I would like to read on this very topic. I believe a couple other council persons have emails as well. The first is from Katie Groff. It says, City Council members, I want to start off by thanking you for your time and efforts in serving council. It does not go unnoticed. I wanted to send a quick note on my thoughts after hearing and reading about the park's master plan discussions you have been having in council meetings. I am writing to let you know that I'm in support of moving forward with spending money on a parks master plan. I agree we have put a lot of money in our parks and they are beautiful, but that effort was just the beginning. This future spending is taking Defiance to the next level and setting up major shifts and changes in our community development. If you were going to be asking for tax dollars to support this effort down the road, which I support, I would feel more comfortable, and I am sure others would too, knowing that the city has a plan that they will be following using these dollars in the best possible way. Our DDVB just rebranded our city based on our nature, outdoors, and resources. We need to start moving in that direction. Everyone asks for more to do in our community, and we can bring that to them. There is always going to be money that can be spent in different ways, I get that. But I think you need to look at the big picture here and what this plan will help us down the road, not just the immediate price tag. Mr. Waxler, roads will always be an issue. That will never change, but I won't say roads would be one of the bigger problems in this town. I also lived in Chicago for 15 years and learned to drive like a frogger to avoid potholes. I run daily every which way in this town and actually prefer running in our roads over the sidewalks. And Mr. Resty, I think we all know the Tridge is an idea that is very, very down the road. This council could be laying groundwork for something like that to be built here in 50 years. That is exciting. I'm encouraging you to think big about the next 5 to 10 years. You have a fantastic group of people in council and city administration right now. I believe you guys can make big things happen. Thank you for your time. And that's from Katie Groff, 301 West 3rd Street, Defiance. The next 2 are slightly shorter. Next up from Drew Schindler. Dear City Council, I am writing this email in favor of moving the Parks and Riverfront Master Plan forward. I would like to first off applaud the administration of Defiance for their conservative spending.
This thing is going crazy.
Did yours doing that?
We don't know.
No, we're on service.
Sorry, Mr. President.
No problem. And going on, and I appreciate the city council stepping back and looking at this $169,000 is a lot of money. I am a very conservative business. I don't believe in spending money if we don't. But with saying that, Defiance is a growing place with a new announcement of a significant business coming to town and possibly more to come. Defiance needs to be in position to be able to fill these jobs and need these employees to live in Defiance. In my opinion, we need to be ready for the growth of Defiance and the quality of life issues, which are very important for the youth and keeping families here. In order to do that, we need to make sure we have this in place because Defiance is going to be growing here in the near future. As a business owner, I'm looking at investing in our business because we need to be ready for the demand, and it takes money to put these things in place to be ready for that growth. One other note that I will say is, in my understanding, if you have a Parks and Riverfront plan in place, you have a better chance of receiving grant money. My outlook on grant money is, if the government is lending out money, it's better in our hands than in another community. So thank you for stepping back and looking at this, which is a lot of money, but looking at the big picture, it's a small investment in moving Defiance forward. As I try to look at everything in this light, if you are not moving forward, you are dying. I am not a person to get into political issues or government, but I do think that this is something that we need to keep the youth and families of Defiance here and the talent to be able to grow Defiance forward. Thank you. Signed, Drew Schindler. And the third one, this is the last one that I have, from Jim Williams, EVP, Northern Market Area President. Good afternoon. I want to email you and comment on the master plan for the Parks Department. I ran into Mayor McCann this morning and we briefly discussed it. I understand there is some discussion going on right now and I wanted to voice some support for the plan. The improvements that the city has made to our local parks over the last several years has been very impressive and are a great add to the city. The parks are a definite bright spot in the community and it is noticed across the board. While a study seems a bit pricey, it seems that we need an overall plan to be able to continue the good things that you have been doing. I feel it is critical in bringing business to town and keeping them. Parks and biking paths have been so nice to have in our city. My wife and I went out last year and around. We have gone to the dam and to the reservoir. We look forward to more rides this year. I'm happy to discuss this with you further if you like. I just wanted to let you know parks are to the city and to us. Thank you. Signed, Jim Williams. Mr. Mast.
Yes, I just have one I received this afternoon from Stephen Groff, Fallen Timbers Drive. He said, I am not able to attend tonight's meeting due to conflict. However, I am against paying this exorbitant amount for Parks Master Plan when we already have one that was completed in 1992. And I am not in favor of a stupid tri-bridge the mayor wants. It would create more problems of ice and log jamming in the river and would also create more expensive maintenance that would be very costly in the future. There's already a way of walking to each park using existing walkways. I believe the money could be better spent on roads that need maintenance than a plan that would be controlled by the mayor to his content. I would rather we continue to consider planning for the Buckman Park with possible assistance from the ODNR engineering department, who already spent a lot of money for a state park honoring the Shawnee tribes and Native Americans in the area. We could benefit with the information they have already collected with the aid of the Shawnee tribes, and perhaps they would even assist us with planning our park rather than spending a lot of money in planning that could go toward what Randy had in mind. Respectfully, Stephen Groff.
Thank you. Mrs. Crutch.
I have one here, Dear Mayor McCann and City Council members from Beth Sig. This letter is in support of moving forward with funding the master plan for riverfront development. As a full-time realtor who has recently been working with housing developers in hopes of attracting them to the city, I can tell you that most of the questions regarding whether or not to build here are revolving around two subjects: ability to attract buyers at a price point where they can make a profit, and quality of life issues that would result in demand. They realize that out-of-town transplants may be more willing to pay the higher housing prices they hope to command. We know that we have new job growth coming, but that does not mean that those workers are going to choose to live in or around Defiance. I have seen other presidents where workers choose to commute because their job location did not offer the amenities they were looking for. Specifically, I was involved with the steel mill development near Delta decades ago and heard the conversations from workers who then chose to locate in Bowling Green or Maumee for the amenities they offered. We are already at a disadvantage because of what we don't have: ice skating rinks, big shopping meccas, and specialty entertainment venues. What we do have is even better: a safe and pleasant place to raise our families. Development of our parks has been ongoing and is a huge benefit, and further development, including the riverfront, would definitely work in our favor. Please consider funding the master plan. Sincerely, Beth Sig.
Thank you. And I wanted to get those read if they were going to be, that way you have in mind some of the emails that we received before you
I will say,
speak to the issue.
while this has been going on, I have received 2 text messages saying the feed isn't working. Maybe you've got that.
Spectrum is down,
Okay.
so there's no YouTube going on, and the sound will now stop. Sorry.
Okay, but that's fine.
However,
A little background music.
however, we still are recording it, so it will be viewable, just not live.
You know, I think the letters from both sides are well done. There may be some people here that would like to say a few things tonight. I don't know. One of the points of emphasis, I believe it was in Mr. Schindler's letter, talks about the ability to take this Parks Master Plan and apply for grants. We've been very successful since I've been mayor. We brought Mickey Warnke on board. Melinda works hard as well in applying for grants. We get our little garden variety of grants, especially through the capital campaign every other year that comes out of the State House. That's always appreciated. We've done spectacular things with those grants. But I think everyone here knows that we want to do even more spectacular things. And we don't know what those are yet. We do know that to do the kinds of things that we've talked about, the assistance of grants in larger sums of money into the 7-figure range would be extremely helpful. And that's what we would go after. We just don't believe, and we've been told by elected officials at the state and federal level, that having a parks and riverfront master plan in place would assist in supporting the money to fund those grants. And I'll have to say that, especially the riverfront, if we didn't have our rivers, I don't know what we do for water. If we didn't have our rivers, it's just such a huge asset that we have to benefit from. The 20 years or so that I've been actively involved in city government, that's always been something that we've stressed. It saddens me a little bit that so much emphasis is being placed on the Tridge, and I don't mean this as any criticism to you, Mr. Rusty, because you aren't really the one that's driving that. The Tridge is such a small part of this, and as I said the other day, I don't know whether it will ever happen. And obviously, if it's 50 years down the road, I'm reasonably confident I'm not going to see it. So, I don't know, as I said last week, on the Tridge side of things, even though many believe it would be a game changer for our community, and I don't, have any of you visited Midland, Michigan? And you have, Mrs. Crush. Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. It's awesome.
It is, and it's pretty awesome. And, but that those rivers are narrower.
Yes,
Much
narrower.
Yes, and so, it works for Midland, and obviously that was built with a large contribution of money from Dow Chemical Company, which has a large presence in Midland, Michigan. And I wish we would ratchet back to some degree the emphasis on the Tridge and look at the walkability of our community, look at the potential to move forward with Gateway Park, look at the potential to make our rivers more accessible with some of the lookouts that we saw in that plan that was done by Beckett and Rader. I still have a strong passion, I think somebody mentioned that, Mr. Mast, I think it was you, to get Buckman Park moving along. I feel like I made a promise to Randy that we would do that. So that's obviously high up on my list. I don't have a number one necessarily. I really don't. That's the idea of this plan. I'm not going to decide. Council's not going to decide. Nobody in this audience is going to decide. The community will decide. The community will set the priorities. The people will be out there, the priorities, because the plan is to engage those folks. So I think I've carried on enough, Mr. President. Again, I don't want to take the voices away from the folks that are here, and I know you don't either. So I'll pause there.
All right, thank you. Mr. Rusty.
I feel this ordinance is too big and too expensive. And in my opinion, I feel a new ordinance needs to be brought to our table requesting approval of a smaller project. Today I will vote no on this ordinance.
Mrs. Crutch.
I had the pleasure of talking to a couple people on the phone, Mr. Keller and Kirsty Mack. So they were downtown business owners, so I took it upon myself to contact a few of the downtown business owners. I texted Trish Spicer, I texted Paulette Cox, Vicki Heilshorn, Angie and Ann Miller, just to kind of get their point of view as far as downtown small business owners of what they would see for the riverfront. And they gave me a whole different kind of perspective of what they would like to see as far as the downtown business people. Looking at it, not just of the walking trails or whatever, they were looking at it, how it would bring people more downtown to their businesses. So it was very, very good to hear those comments. So I enjoyed that. And I did have text and I was gonna read them, but my phone died. Sorry. It's out in the car, dead.
Were they good? We can get a charger if they were
It could, because Ann Miller wrote a very nice text about some of the things that she would like to see, and Angie, both of them did. And Trish, all three of them wrote some really nice comments, and so did Paulette, so. Vicki Heilshorn was the only one, she didn't really know what was going on, so. But it was really good to hear from those people.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments from council? Mr. Mast?
I guess I've struggled with this ordinance all along. Like, I've gone back and forth, and there are some key things. I've always thought the scope was large, as Mr. Uresti pointed out. But I guess there's some other things that we can't overlook, and that's the simple fact that this was budgeted. And we approved this in the budget. So I'm thinking next year in November, we need to ask a few more questions when we're looking over the budget. I like the idea of new funding sources. That's definitely a positive. If we can step up to a larger amounts. And just for the sake of the record, over the past 5 years, this council has passed well over a dozen ordinances for almost $2.3 million in parks improvements. Some grant money and some budgeted money. So we're not, by any means, this council isn't ignoring parks. Where I think everyone here is in favor of park improvement. It's just finding the best way, I guess, to do and make those improvements. Something that'll, and honestly, the support for this, it's probably half and half. I really think it is. It's, from what I've heard, for every letter or phone call I get for, there's one that against. It's I don't know where the line's drawn. I don't know, some people just don't like parks, some people don't like spending money. So it's one of those tough calls. I can see the benefit of it, but we just need to, I guess, dial it in a little closer.
Any other comments from council? Mr. Corbett?
Are you going out there first? Let's go there first.
Any comments on this issue? Mr. Keller? I'm sure you know, but as a guest, please state your name and your address.
Brian Keller, 379 Maumee River Crossing. So glad West High got done, and now it's like a speedway. So the bumper was good to keep us at the speed limit. But yeah, thank you for letting me speak here tonight. And as you know, I've invested a lot of money in downtown Defiance. Not done investing, trying to get 300, 302, and 304, 611 Second Street, and the deluxe cleaners all improved for it. And there's other things I've thought about doing in downtown. I'd love to see a rooftop, restaurant and bar, like, can we put something like that downtown? And I think there's other investors, but there's got to be a commitment from the city in terms of a long-term plan before you're going to get people putting money into the community. Like, I can do that to the corner, but that's not going to really upgrade downtown, right? And we do have a beautiful downtown, and you guys have done an amazing job with the parks, absolutely amazing job with the parks. And the riverfront, it looks better than what it did in the past. But we can get better, and we can position this city to where we can actually grow. Our population has been stagnant, if not declining a little bit. And we have some opportunities with some businesses coming in, and we're going to have some missed opportunities because we won't have housing, and we won't have the amenities in here. Why people would want to move in from outside of the city into here, and they're going to end up in Fort Wayne and Maumee, right? And so, in my business, we can work on everyday things, and we have to, but we have to plan. You can never stop planning, and you've got to have that master plan. And yeah, it's a lot of money. Of course it is. And we got to be prudent with our money, but you got to plan. And if you don't plan and you don't have professionals come in and lay it out for you, we're kind of swimming upstream in the Maumee, right? So it's a lot of money. I think to do a piecemeal, park by park, is not putting together a comprehensive, cohesive plan. And you won't get the benefit of what is the best thing unless you have an outsider sit back there and talk to a lot of people, get a lot of ideas, look at, our infrastructure, what we can take advantage of and not take advantage of, and really just lay this all out for us. And, I'd like to continue investing in Defiance, but I really need that commitment from the city to get us a master plan so we know where it's going. I would love to see Gateway Park. Love to see it. We spend all this money, we got a restaurant downtown, but that's all we have. A couple restaurants. We don't have a park where kids can come and play and where people can hang out, and where you can have bands, and to really raise that excitement of being there. And then, oh, by the way, go get a beer, at one of the local restaurants. But we gotta have a plan. Like, maybe that's not the best thing to do first. Maybe it's better to do this over here. But if it's not laid out and where people can vote on, this makes sense, that doesn't make sense, then again, it's all piecemeal. So, before I end, any questions for me while I'm up here? So, all right, well, thank you.
Thanks for being our guest.
Good evening. I'm Erica Willitzer with the Defiance County CIC. And I did send a letter. Hopefully you guys all received that. Obviously, I'm in support of the plan. And I wanted to kind of take a couple years back when I first came to the CIC. What people don't realize is that we've actually had a lot of losses. While it seems like we have a lot of wins, we've had some losses when we've been after some projects. One of the things that I've taken the opportunity to do is, after we've lost a project and also now winning projects, I get with those companies and I ask them what I can do better when presenting. So the first company, which I will not name, I asked what could we do better? And they said in their presentation they'd like to see us showcasing some of the restaurants. I was like, okay. I told Jobs Ohio, RGP, that that's what they wanted me to do, and they were like, ooh, we've never done that before. And I'm like, but I'm gonna do it. So we started adding that in. And then to Cinderlow Curly, we started working with them, the mayor and I, and Melinda, and their teams. And I will tell you, after we won that project, I said, what could we do better? And they flat out said, you could show us your parks, your trails. And like, okay, then I told the state, like, we're gonna start incorporating this. I'm gonna have slides, which was against what a lot of communities are doing. So now when I do our slide presentations, I always talk about the work that we're doing. When we have site visits in town, I call the mayor and we take tours around and he shows them the parks. So Mr. Mast, you said you spent $2.3 million in parks for the council. We are leveraging every bit of that. And that is how we are getting the companies that we're getting at the caliber of Metalex. They're coming because we're showing them the work, the beautification that we're putting into our city. And I want to make this point too. The other thing that I've been doing is I thought that this was something you guys had already approved. I am kind of like that racehorse that's like wants to jump in and start running. So I heard that that was approved. I've been telling companies that I've been working with already that you've got this in the works. And now I might have to go back on my word, which is something I never want to do. I would just hope that you would consider that. I am very confident that this team at Defiance is going to take a plan, and they're gonna take Defiance to the next level, and that's going to be because of the decision that you make. We've already taken that 2.3 and leveraged it into, let me just calculate real quick, over the last 2 years, we've had almost around $435 million in new investment in Defiance. Most of the time when we're selling those companies, we're selling Defiance, but you make it so much easier because we can leverage the parks and show them the work that's being done. So I ask that you support this because it is really going to take us, we're right there, we're right on the cusp of going to the next level, and approving the riverfront is gonna do that for us. It did it for Fort Wayne, it's done it for Toledo, and I think Defiance can be at that next great level like they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Pastor Sobiak.
Pray for us again.
No, my name's Mick Sobiek. I live at 508 Carpenter Road here in Defiance. And I've been following this in the newspaper. One of the things that I don't, maybe I missed it in the paper, the grant application and hope out of this, great. Never heard that. Never saw it in the paper. So that might change some minds. I think that's wonderful. One of my questions would be, how much community or citizen input will be involved in this master plan? Is it all outside or coming in, or are we going to have people locally adding to that? Because I think we have some great minds locally that are interested in that. I love the history of Defiance. I studied it. I did archaeology digs at the fort grounds when I was in college. Own business here. I tell people I'm a lifelong Defiance resident. My sentence hasn't been pardoned or commuted, but I love the community. And I think coming into here, I was kind of against spending the money, but when you hear about the potential to use that for grant applications and to leverage that, it makes a lot more sense spending the money. I do want to say, our city parks have never looked better the whole time I've lived here. What the council and the mayor and the administration has done is wonderful. I look forward to Randy's Park being developed down there. Randy's was a great guy, and look forward to that. I look forward to the Gateway Park being developed, and I think a master plan is a good idea. My thing was kind of like Mr. Urastri is, do we need to spend that much money? But if it's going to benefit us in the long run, it's probably a great investment. And so hearing what I heard tonight about the grant application makes a lot more sense to me to spend the money and get it started. I would just like to make sure as a citizen there's some local input. And like you said, Mr. Mayor, is our rivers are a huge asset. They're a huge asset, and I don't even think we've harnessed them so we could. I'm not a Tridge fan. And nothing against that, but I just think the natural look of the rivers without a bridge there is a great idea. I don't think I'm gonna have to worry about it either, but I think the parks are worth investing in. I think coming into here, I've kind of rethought it a little bit, and I'm not one that likes to support or like to spend a lot of money. I appreciate Mr. Waxler. I see in the paper he questions things a lot, and I love having questions. I think it sharpens everything. And so I would be in favor of it at this point, especially in light of the potential of using that to leverage grants to do some great things with our parks. And then hearing the economic development with it. So I've kind of changed my mind sitting here and listening. And I think it wouldn't hurt to get more information in the paper about how that could be leveraged. It might help change some of the citizens' minds. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. With that.
Could I address a couple of his concerns?
Sure.
No. So,
Are you present?
Pastor, there will be hopefully a significant amount of community input. There will be town hall meetings, if you will, that will be held. Everyone is welcome to attend. If there's folks that come from outside our boundaries a little bit, I think we'll welcome that as well, because those are the folks that come here and spend money as well. But yes, the plan from the beginning has been community involvement. And we've had community involvement up to this point that began to help us develop these ideas that were part of the request for proposals that Mrs. Sprouse sent out and got the input from and narrowed it down to the 3 companies that we interviewed and ultimately decided on the one that we're proposing for tonight. So that was done. And, I apologize for the information not getting out. We talk about these things here at the city ad nauseum, and Border Control meets twice a week and discusses it, and minutes are taken, but they're minutes, they aren't seconds, so that maybe some details are left out of those minutes, and council gets those minutes, and I know they read them because they ask questions about them. And obviously, only so much can be covered in the newspaper. In reference to the grant applications, I'm not sure I did as good a job explaining that to council and the community. Although having this plan is absolutely no guarantee none, that we will get these grants. But it is something that we can attach with that application that will demonstrate that we have a plan.
With
And-
due diligence.
And we not only, Mick, have a plan, is it all right if I call you Mick?
Yeah.
You can call me Mike. That we have a plan, but that we formulated that plan and those ideas with community input. That it's not the administrations, it's not the city councils, it's a community-wide plan. And I think that's what I'm really excited about that process, and I harken back to what I shared with council sometime in the past, when we had the home show out at the Defiance College campus, and folks came up and talked to us, and we engaged, and it was exciting listening to their input. And so I think I cleared up those issues. I will say, just yesterday, Mr. Mack and I had lunch with a residential developer who is describing the project as he's interested in developing. And one of the things he said was, I think we need some park space within our development. And would the city help me with that on the design, or maybe tell me what we need to do? And it was just interesting, that was his idea.
Mr. Rusty?
I'd like to make a motion, but I'd like to make a motion to basically remove the tridge from the language of this ordinance.
So a motion to amend the ordinance.
Remove the tridge language from this from the ordinance.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend the ordinance in front of us, specifically to remove reference to the tridge as part of the plan. Mr. Engel?
I got a question for Mayor on the tridge, what Joe's mentioned, that'll come back again, and we'll have to approve that basically separately.
I'm gonna have to defer to Mr. O'Donnell on 1.1 point only. Mr. Rusty is asking to amend the ordinance.
I need a
When
second.
you brought that,
I need a second.
Yeah, we do have a motion. Do we have a second? Go ahead.
Never mind.
there's nothing in the ordinance itself that mentions the tridge. In the proposal from the company, it is discussed as one of the bullet points. And, but it's not in the actual ordinance, so procedurally, I'm not sure how that would work. We're not amending the ordinance, we're amending that attachment to the ordinance, that's all.
Can we request it stricken from the scope of services?
The way you would do that, Mr. Mast, is be somehow like a motion to adopt under the condition that the city strike the tridge bullet point from the attached exhibit to the ordinance, because it is, like the mayor said, it is in the exhibit. So you could do it that way and just have the council clerk redline that tridge mentioned. I think it's phase. I'm not finding it right now.
It's on page 5.
Page 5, okay.
That might be a good way to do it.
Engineer always knows.
Phase 2, item 2, G7.
Wait,
It should be in there.
it must be on a different
Right here.
page 5. Okay, yeah, okay. So you would strike that on the, as a condition of your motion to adopt, if that's what you're going for.
Thank you. Mr. Corbett?
I will ask the question along those lines. If that's stricken, does that change the price tag of this particular project?
I wouldn't think so.
Wouldn't think so. So it doesn't really matter one way or the other if it's in there as far as the cost of this master plan. And it's still not necessarily going to be accomplished anyway in the long term if we vote down the funding for the tridge.
I think we all understand, as I outlined last week, I believe, that the process on the tridge itself, at some point, council would be asked to approve,
Funding.
possibly even applying for a grant to do the tridge. And then council would again be asked to approve a ordinance to go forward with the engineering. And then at some point beyond that, council would be asked to approve to probably put the issue to the voters. And then obviously it goes to the voters.
So we're gonna accomplish this a different way as far as the tridge is concerned, rather than strike it from the proposal.
Yeah,
Right.
But,
The ordinance in front of us today is approving or disapproving
right,
the scope and services contract for the first 2 phases.
you know, I've listened to a lot of comments today, appreciate everybody being here, and the council's comments, I appreciate them all. I share and have shared the concerns about the cost and the timing, but I know that quality of life issues are very important and very beneficial to our community, not just for the health and enjoyment of our existing community, but for the opportunity to market Defiance. So I believe that this has a big opportunity for a return on investment. Yes, there's upfront cost, but at the end of the game, that should return to us tenfold, in my opinion. I did that just for him, because he chewed us out last week. I would like to make a motion to adopt, sir.
So we've had a motion and no second? No, we have a motion to adopt.
Second.
Second, Mr. Engel? Did you have a question or comment?
I just wanted to clarify the ordinance. I mean, there's lots of things that we could discuss from how I feel, but the emergency was the thing that seemed to concern me at the time. We could have had 3 readings and it would have been a little bit more softened. But for our ordinance, we are basically just approving the work of the company to develop a plan. We are not, I'm not always in favor of a log jam either, like Mr. Uresti had mentioned. You know, and there's a couple other things that I'm concerned about within the development, but the company is doing the research to give us the results that we can either piecemeal or do a larger scope of it. We have invested $2.3 million in the past 2 years. The parts do look great. And I've had a lot of compliments from parents and children, especially the splash pad that's now open, that it's doing well. The attendance looks great every time I drive by. But I guess my key is, you know, with this, we are committing the company to do the research, basically. That's where we're looking at. That's just what I wanted to mention, so thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. We do, Mr. Waxler?
You have any idea the cost of the engineering once we have these pictures?
Look at cost estimates for anticipated design included in the cost of the construction. So they'll give us a full picture.
Right, but then we're gonna have to have engineering done to that, right?
Yes, that's always the next step.
Mrs. Crutch?
But with that concept, we could, if we have the master plan in place, we can downsize it to what explicit thing that we want to work on. Maybe it's just the Buckman Park as part of the plan. So it wouldn't be that expensive as far when you think of the engineering aspect, is what I'm thinking. And just a quick note, you know, I kind of sat down and I was thinking of, you know, 50 years I'm not gonna be here, like the bear. But, you know, I'm part of the 2030 project plan that is part of the Defiance Area Foundation, where, you know, we're putting money into something that's gonna be in 30 years that the kids are gonna be able to, you know, produce or plan or whatever, and the money's gonna be there, that they're gonna be able to, the kids are going to design or pick out what they wanna do. And I thought, you know, I've been investing in that. We also need to invest in, you know, the riverfront. And, you know, I was a river rat. I lived on the river, you know, and I skied in that river. I know that's weird to say, but I did, you know, off a dock. But, you know, we do need to use our rivers more. I'd like to see more kayaking and, you know, that. But, so I am in favor of it.
So with that, we have a motion and a second to adopt.
Let's get into it. Mr. Corbett,
Yes.
Mr. Hancock,
Yes.
Mr. Rusty,
No.
Mr. Mass,
Yes.
Mr. Waxler,
No.
Mrs. Crutch,
Yes.
Mr. Engel.
Yes.
With that, this ordinance is adopted.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance authorizing the acquisition of real property at 204 East Second Street.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Federal Emergency Management Agency distributes grants for what's called the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program in order to, mitigate flood losses and exposure to the National Flood Insurance Program. That's the extra insurance you have to buy if you're in floodplains, flood zones. The Maumee Valley Planning Organization helps the city apply for and obtain grants, among other things, to acquire local properties that are in some of these flood zones, such as this one at 204 East 2nd Street. Both the appraisal and the proposed purchase price is $54,000. And we are asking council to approve the attached purchase agreement and also agree to any incidental documents and expenses necessary to get through closing and acquire the property. And the idea is really this parts of the city, this is city, pretty much everything except for this one. It's to incorporate this 204 East 2nd into the rest of Kingsbury Park.
Do we have any questions for Mr. O'Donnell? Mrs. Crutch?
I just have a concern because it's a house and we have a housing market problem. And tearing down a house just for the sake of tearing down a house, really, I have a problem with that. And I know that it's in the flood zone, but it's really not been flooded for a few years.
I don't
So,
think that's been flooded for 20 years.
20 years, yeah. So I'm tearing down, and it's a nice little house.
That exact point has been discussed, and it is one of the conditions of the program. We can't displace anyone. So it's been on the list for a few years now, and we finally, actually it was Maumee Valley Planning, finally helped find alternate housing for the gentleman that lived there. And so they said we were eligible to move forward for this project.
But it's a house.
Mr. Mast?
Do we have an accurate count yet on how many houses remain in that flood zone?
I do not. Maumee Valley might have that.
I have a list, Mr. Mast. I formulated a list and we've made progress on it. I've deleted off of the list because they've been demolished. We also deleted some because of Mrs. Crutch's concerns. And we're down to like a half a dozen.
That was my count, is what was left in there according to the auditor's website.
We
I wasn't
had
sure if they
a
were all
significant
included.
number over on Riverside, basically between the railroad viaduct headed north to Hopkins Street. But we've stopped any movement there except for what we've already done, again, simply because Mrs. Crutch is concerned, and just the cost of it, and probably not the night to say this, but I'll say it anyways, we really didn't have a plan as to what we were gonna do with that property once we had it cleared. All we were doing was increasing our lawn mowing burden.
Do we have any other questions or comments in these regards? Mr. Engel?
No other questions, most suspend and call.
We have a motion to suspend and call, Mr. Engel. Second, Mr. Mast.
Mr. Rusty,
Yes.
Mr. Mast,
Yes.
Mr. Wexler,
No.
Mrs. Crutch,
No,
Mr. Engel,
Yes.
Mr. Corbett,
Yes.
and Mr. Hancock.
Yes. Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt, Mr. Hancock.
Second.
Second, Mr. Corbett.
Oh, I'm sorry, you know what? The motion to suspend and call the question requires 6 affirmative votes. And we only have 5 according to my tally.
Yeah, 1,
Correct.
2, 3, 4, 5. Nope, so it did not.
I was asleep at the switch.
What can happen with the house? I mean, can somebody move into that house and live there?
The owner has no intention of renting it out. He'd like to see it demolished.
Also with what I read is that nobody could go in and take any of the wood or the fixtures or anything. I mean, just.
We don't make the rules, Mrs. Crutch. We just have to
What a
abide by them.
waste.
The reason is Uncle Sam is buying that, is
I
purchasing
love
that on
Uncle
behalf of the taxpayer, 90% of it, and city comes up with the other 10. And so we can't be, then giving away what the government's buying.
So you were correct, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So that would fail, yeah.
The motion to suspend and call failed. It will come back next time as a second reading.
Well, we do have to motion to let lie.
All right, you're correct.
Motion let lie.
Motion let lie.
Second.
Second. All in favor of letting this issue lie until next time, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. This will come back as a second reading next time. Mr. Hancock.
Yeah, I just had one thing that came to mind. In the near future, we're gonna have some bridge closings and openings. Are we able to have, I believe that our traffic is gonna increase on High Street, as well as Elliott Road. Is it feasible we can have some additional enforcement on those areas just to make sure everything runs smoothly?
We have law enforcement watch high, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay, we will pass that along.
I won't be careful. Thank you.
With the items of legislation addressed, we do have an executive session, but I have a couple citizens' concerns that I was asked to bring up before we go into executive session. Both of them for Mr. Mack. The first one's from Mr. Hahn, Ralph Hahn. He wanted me to let you know that he's been emailing and we've had communication this last week, and he wanted to ask if there was a procedure in place to make sure that ordinances have been approved that is promulgated to law enforcement so that they know it's now enacted. Mostly the fireworks ordinance that was passed in regards to Cinco de Mayo.
So yes, there is, and normally when it comes to something like that, the chief of police is at the meeting when it's finally passed. That ordinance kind of dragged out for a while as we talked through it. So the chief of police wasn't there. I would take full responsibility for it. The 30 days was up. We had not kind of given law enforcement the green light that, hey, your 30 days is up. This is what the new ordinance is. It has since been corrected. We received complaints as well that law enforcement, their response was, well, we thought we were still operating under kind of the old rules. Like I said, accept full responsibility for it. The 30 days was up, a weekend hit, and we hadn't put the message out quite fast enough, but we will stay on better top of it from now on.
So
Lesson learned. I mean, we had a similar situation before you came with Dora. The law enforcement said, hey, why is everybody walking around with these open containers? And that really happened. And so, yeah, we're learning and evolving and adapting.
Yeah. So I would add though that, we did receive complaints, but again, to stress, when this does happen, law enforcement cannot cite those people unless they're seeing them light the fuse. If residents see these people, get pictures of someone lighting the fuse, we have evidence, that then gets into Sean's court, and he would have to speak on that. But we can do presence patrol. Once we get the call that fireworks are going out, unless we see them lighting that fuse, there's not a lot of enforcement necessarily that can happen. But we are on it. I do apologize to the residents for not getting that message out quick enough.
But a system is in place, it works really nice, and we've been reminded to stay on top of it.
System is normally email. And I forgot, or we missed a step on that one, 30 days out, so it's been corrected.
And secondly, I received an email from a Marianne Bone, just as a reminder that the south end of Terrawenda, streets need repaired. The drainage curb is eroding and breaking down in numerous areas, and people in that area and Ralvin Street would like someone to take a look at their streets to get them patched or repaired. Yes, sir. But that's all I had. I promised I would bring it up during citizens' concerns. Mrs. Crutch.
One citizen concern too about Derbyshire. They were wondering if the side streets like Wyandotte, any of those are going to be surfaced, or is it just Derbyshire.
They all are.
They all
They all
are,
are.
great, then I will tell them, thank you.
The issue was, somebody that was doing the complete restoration work around the perimeter was telling people on those two streets that they weren't getting anything done.
Gotcha.
Well, they weren't getting a complete restoration, but they are getting milled and
That's right.
surfaced.
That is correct, and that's
We
the
have to
last
ask the
thing they'll do.
engineer to get that.
Gotcha, I will tell. That's awesome.
With that, we have a few minutes to stretch our legs before we enter executive session.